So this next session was actually an interesting topic for me to even bring to this show. I thought about it. This is not, you know, a women's conference, nor is this panel a women's lib panel. But one of the things that shocked me the most, and part of it was due to my meeting and having a great relationship with Halle, was really learning about the female influence on healthcare spending. And when you look at the numbers, it's astounding that 80% of healthcare decisions are made by women. And yet, the irony of all of it is that 4% of healthcare companies are woman-run. Now, I'm not saying there are not women in their companies, but we're talking about in highly influential parts of the company. And so the reason that we think it's really important when you're talking about consumer electronics and you're just talking about healthcare in general is that if 80% of the decisions are being made by women, who is doing the speaking to those women? And if it's men that kind of don't understand what the issues are, I find the irony. Well, that's what they're here to discuss. I'm not going to go on any longer, but I am going to introduce you to Halle Tecco, who is the founder and CEO of Rock Health, the leading incubator, accelerator, everything-ater in healthcare right now. It's unbelievably exciting to see what's coming out of their organization. And one little fun fact about her is that she has an obscenely fat cat, so maybe she'll actually be able to show you some photos later. Have a great panel.
Thank you. Thanks, Jill. Is this on? My cat's not that fat, for the record. If anybody wants to see pictures afterwards, he's just healthy. So thank you so much for joining us today, and it's great to see both women and men in the audience. This is not supposed to be a battle of the sexes. This is just supposed to be a conversation with some women that are leading the charge in the healthcare space, and why it is so important that we recognize that there is a disparity of women at leadership positions in healthcare, as in many industries, that there are things that we can do to fix that, and it is something important that we address. And I'm really excited to see this on the agenda. I've never seen this on the agenda at a tech or healthcare conference, so it's really great. So today I am here with my panelists, Donna Cryer, who's the CEO and president of Cryer Health, and Madhura Bhat, who is the co-founder of Health for America, and Wendy Mcnair, who's the vice president of worldwide innovation for Pfizer. So we have a really great a diverse group that will have different perspectives from both corporate entrepreneurship and patient advocacy. Why don't I give you guys a few minutes to just introduce yourselves and talk about what you're up to?
Sure. So I'm Donna Cryer. I have three pretty distinct roles in the healthcare ecosystem as patient. I've had inflammatory bowel disease diagnosed for 27 years, and I'm 18 years post-transplant. I'm very blessed to say, post-liver transplant. I've been a patient advocate and work with patient advocates across the country, now across the world, primarily thanks to health information technology and social media. And I've also led patient advocacy organizations, most recently the American Liver Foundation, but I've also consulted with and have helped to support the American Heart Association, American Diabetes Association, and other large voluntary health organizations. And so I want to share all those perspectives with you today, and what a commonality among all the three is that there are a great number of women in all three of those categories who I believe are really an untapped and unrealized resource in advancing digital health.
Great. Thank you both, and thank you everyone. It's such an honor to be here. I am Madhura Bhat, and I am the co-founder of Health for America. And really, you know, I think with my own leadership and role as a woman, what has really influenced me was I grew up in Zambia. I was born there, and I moved to the US for undergrad, and then upon finishing a master's in public health, spent a lot of time working at different nonprofit organizations, including Population Services International, where I really, you know, found these great women leaders there who were really mentors to me and really kind of helped shape my career to where it is today. I also was privileged enough to be one of 20 Americans selected to the Robert Bosch Fellowship in Germany. And you know, here again, I saw the importance of networks, and as a woman and as an entrepreneur just starting out, I recently left my job, and about 2 months ago, I'm now full-time for Health for America, and it's a scary step, but it's something that I could not have done without the support of both men and women alike. But I think having not just on this stage these amazing women leaders, but it's really important to have support networks and teams, and I hope to be able to speak a little bit about that and learn from everyone on that.
Great. Good afternoon. I'm Wendy Mcnair, and as Halle said, I am the head of worldwide innovation at Pfizer, representing a little bit more of the corporate establishment and the efforts trying to be made there to encourage more women to go into healthcare and to provide support and encouragement for women to climb the corporate leadership ladder. Within Pfizer specifically. Myself, I've spent a little bit over 15 years at Pfizer in varied careers, a lot of it within the analytics organization, and have had the opportunity through mentorship with others across the organization to take on some very different roles over the course of the last few years. I worked in our clinical trial organization, working on quality management. I managed the state of Connecticut for our primary care business, and now I'm heading up innovation. Before coming to Pfizer, I spent a few years at Deloitte & Touche. I was also a healthcare fellow as part of Northwestern Memorial organization, and prior to that, have an MBA and a BA.
Great, thank you guys. So when we started Rock Health, when we had our applications open for the first time, this is when I recognized that there was a problem. We have a mostly female staff, but the applications that we were seeing from entrepreneurs were really all male-led. And we said, where are the ladies at? And so we wanted to see if this was a problem that was unique to us. Were we not marketing to the right group, or is this an industry problem? And so we pulled some data. And what we found was that women compose of 73% of medical and health service managers. So kind of the mid-level management women are representing. 47% of medical school graduates, so almost half of the graduates. But only 32% of doctors and surgeons. 18% of hospital CEOs. 14% of partners at VCs that focus on healthcare investments. And 4% of healthcare company CEOs, and we took that list from the Fortune 500 list. So this is something that is a true problem as we climb the ladder in healthcare, is that we're seeing fewer women at top positions, while we still are very much represented at lower levels. So let's talk about this. Why are women underrepresented in leadership positions? What are some of the systemic problems that we're seeing? Donna, would you like to start?
Well, I think that often women aren't putting themselves forward for a lot of these positions. A lot of women don't have sort of the confidence. They certainly have the qualifications and the skills, but they often don't say, well, I can do that. I can take on that challenge. And some of that is the very real balancing act that women are doing in terms of thinking about balancing their family and taking care of their homes or their parents or a host of other responsibilities. I know before I left on this trip, I made sure that the groceries were stocked and the dry cleaning was picked up and that everything was taken care of for my physician husband so that he wouldn't have to worry about anything. And God love him, that's not what he does before he travels. So I think it is a combination of factors creating, being proactive enough to create the time and the space and the peace and the quiet that's necessary to be creative and to innovate, I think is a challenge for a lot of women, but it's well worth it, and it would be worth it for the industry to help us do that for ourselves.
I couldn't agree more, Donna. I think women are often underrepresented also, for the very same facts that you mentioned. Women don't tend to own some of the success that they do. They tend to be more collaborative. And I personally can say, very early on in my career, I would often shy away from, accepting success or, really just speaking up because I felt that, what was the point of putting myself out there? And, it was then perceived as maybe I wasn't as competent or maybe, I think it definitely held me back. And so, with the support of these women networks, and I think now it's fantastic that there are a lot of women leaders who are putting more of these TED Talks out there and different things that are a resource. And so, I started spending more time, and I realized that, if I wanted to succeed, I needed to really own it and really put myself out there, which was a big step for me. But I do think that, women just, especially younger women, having these great role models and networks is what can make them, kind of climb up the ladder.
So I'm hearing lack of role models, some family obligations, time constraints, self-confidence. Wendy, what about ability to connect with senior leadership? And your journey to the top, has that been a problem?
So I think that I think part of the challenge is it almost is a self-fulfilling prophecy that if you have fewer senior women leaders, there are fewer senior women leaders to be mentors to women who would like to become senior leaders. And so to ensure that you have the women, what we've tried to do most recently at Pfizer is we've developed this women's leadership network to try to activate the women senior leaders and get them more exposed to the greater population of the organization so that they can stand up and speak to what was really a part of their success, put themselves out there as a mentor. We have a mentorship program. So I think that that's really important, but it very often is a barrier for that reason. And I think as another example of that, when I was actually working in the field in Connecticut, we had the opportunity to promote one of our sales representatives. And so we offered her the promotion, and she came back and she said, I don't want it. And we said, why don't you want this? She said, because I look at all of the women above me, with the exception of me, who was pretty close to her. She said, but I look at the other women in the organization, and none of them have children. I just had a baby, and it's very important to me that I have work-life balance. So I clearly can't be successful in that role, and she opted out. Wow. So thankfully, we were able to have that conversation and be able to talk her back into taking the job. But how many other women out there are having that conversation only in their head or only at home, and are not going forward and saying, I want to be able to see other women leaders who have been able to forge this path so that I can see that I can do it. And so I do think that that's a really big part of it.
So that's interesting, because I've heard this term, the mommy tax, and how women are put at a disadvantage in the workplace after they have children. Do any of you have children and want to speak about that experience at the workplace?
I don't have kids.
I don't have kids either.
I do. I have,
okay.
I have 3.
Oh, wow.
And I have a 10-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 3-year-old. And there was an article recently, I think it was in the Atlantic Monthly, that spoke about how women in the workplace are perceived as being less serious than men. Women who have children are perceived as being less serious and less committed than men. And it's a challenge. I mean, I think it's both from a balance standpoint, but I think there's obviously other balance issues that women with and without children have to deal with. But I think there's also the mobility issue, which I think is a big barrier as well, because I know to run an operational unit at Pfizer, you have to be willing to pick up and go wherever they tell you need to go.
Sure.
And with young children, sometimes you just can't do that. So it's definitely an additional challenge.
And do you guys feel like when certain women opt out of moving up the ladder, does that hurt other women because there are fewer women to be seen as role models?
Absolutely. I know I've been fortunate enough to mentor a lot of either younger women or women who are my peers, and they'll come, again, I'm not sure if I should take the position. I'm like, take it. I'll help you. I'll support you behind the scenes. We'll build a network, a support team for you, whatever. But you have to take it, because if you don't take it, they're not going to give us another opportunity for a long time. And that's also sort of compounded, particularly when you're talking about women of color. They'll say, well, we tried that and it didn't work, or we tried that and she said no, and so we won't get another opportunity. So really encouraging other women to take the chance to step forward. Another thing that often happens is a job description will come out that has, 5 things five qualifications that it wants, and a woman will have 4 of them, and she'll be like, oh, I don't have that 5th one, so I can't possibly take it. And I'm like, if you have like 1.5 and can fake the other 3.5 or something, and have a friend with the 5th or the 6th, take it, and we'll work it out after you get it. And I think women don't often just sort of have that risk tolerance and that confidence tolerance to just take it on faith. Somebody must have thought well enough of you to give you that opportunity. They think you can do the job, so who are you to say that you can't?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we understand a little bit of the systemic problems. We kind of created this slide to show a survey that we took of, I think, 100 women in healthcare, and actually surveyed them on what they thought were the biggest barriers, and they were all the things that we just said on this panel. But what happens when women are in charge? Wendy, what do you think?
So I think the biggest thing is that it brings in more of diversity of perspective, which always improves the outcome. The more you can bring in, I mean, if you have a group of the same like-minded people addressing an issue, you're always going to get the same answer and output. And so I think that diversity creates a lot of value, and it leads to greater sales, leads to greater revenue, greater productivity and valuation of companies. Enables them to ultimately be more successful because they have the ability of tapping into that diverse perspective. Very often, and as you mentioned, the fact that most healthcare decision makers are women, one of the key things that we found, and I mean, many businesses as a key driver of success, is really understanding your customer, having that customer insight. And so to be able to have people who can bring that perspective to the table is critically important and drives that success.
What do you guys think? Go ahead.
I think that women, when I think of healthcare and healthcare moving to being more solution-oriented, being more outcomes-oriented, also at a strategic level, being more collaborative, and at a tactical level, being more social, I mean, all those things seem to add up to a great opportunity for women. And why wouldn't you want women in charge and women at the leadership ranks of a sector that is starting to have those characteristics, or at least needs to have those characteristics to be successful? So, the data shows everything that Wendy just said, that when women are in charge, these, fantastic synergies happen, these great leaps of understanding and collaboration and partnership and inclusion happen when women are in charge. And certainly for the organizations and teams that I've led, it's been interesting to see the reactions to people who haven't had those experiences or haven't been in those environments before, and they're like, well, nobody really took my ideas, seriously. I really wanted to hear everybody's idea, regardless of their title or their hierarchy. But I was also very focused on outcomes and results and accountability, and I think because we are balancing a lot of things, I'm like, don't waste my time. Time is very precious, and so we really want to work very efficiently and very productively towards that outcome in the environment, so that we can go on and do other things and live other portions of our lives. And I think sometimes men don't always have those time pressures, and they have a little extra time to get to those places. And I think when I've worked either for other women, and certainly I know how I tend to run my teams, I really want things to move along.
Sure. I think one of the things that we see in Silicon Valley, and I guess I'm the only one here from Silicon Valley, is that we have these very high impact, high intense work environments that require long hours, work on weekends, things that might not be family friendly. And I'm curious if you guys have seen any really creative solutions. I think Google has been a really interesting model with having daycare right within the workplace. They allow you to bring your dog to work, food on campus. Startups can afford that. What do you guys think high-impact, low-budget organizations can do to make sure that they're not losing out on talent that isn't able to meet the demands?
So one thing I've seen, and actually this came from Deloitte, they actually have developed what they're calling a side track. So in recognizing that most people's careers, be it men or women, are usually not a direct line up, that you need to take different paths along the way, sometimes straight, sometimes down, that they've actively put together within their career planning options for women to take a sidestep off the fast track, but that has an on-ramp back on, which is really important, because I think that's kind of the fear, is that if you get off, you can't get back on. And so I think things like that, where you can see ahead that there is that on-ramp back on, or that there are special projects that you can work on that may not have the rigidity or the work requirements that a more traditional role might have, gives you the opportunity to have flexibility and keep people actively engaged in the workforce, maybe in a different capacity. So I think those are some interesting things as well.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with that. And I think, I read somewhere that, allowing women to just be women in their jobs is really important. And I think, having these frameworks where women see this next path, having these role models is really critical as well. And then, just making sure that, the teams are kind of understanding. There are going to be days where, you have whatever issues that there might be, but having these understanding responsibilities. And I think, in today's day and age, it's very easy to, we were just actually talking, where is your office? Right before the panel started, and you work from home, and you found that to be completely successful. And I think a lot more companies are allowing that. And so, I think we are going to see a shift in systems and for the better.
Yeah. So the part I had. So I've worked in government. I've worked in in corporations and firms. So when I started my own company and was thinking, what environment do I want to create, not only for myself, but for my staff? Originally we had traditional office space, downtown Washington, D.C. It was all very glossy and impressive, but it wasn't really necessarily the most productive space, and it wasn't necessarily the most profitable space. And so I decided that we just buy a bigger house and work from home, because that's more, partially it was being a woman and wanted to have all these pieces in place, but it was also, for me, a patient-centric solution and a way that I could manage my health and make sure that I ate right and exercised, and that use my time rather than in commuting or doing other things, that I was using my time most efficiently. And so having been in agency environments or law firm environments where it's about billable hours and it's about a lot of let's work weekends and work other things, a lot of times I think that wasn't always truly necessary. That was the culture that was created, but it wasn't what was really necessary to get the job done. So I really try to be very stringent about what time is really necessary to get the job done, and how can you work really efficiently and in a way that respects people's time and talents and energies and everything like that. I'm also known to, as we're traveling on the 12th business trip, when we're in the Charlotte airport, everybody gets massages at the thing, and I think that's sort of uniquely, none of my male bosses have ever treated me to massages and things, but I think that's sort of a female thing. And I will also, since I worked from home, I'd cook for my staff meetings, and one of my male staffers, at one point he was really sad, and he was just like, he was dating someone, and he's like, I can't imagine her making muffins for me. And I was like, it's okay, I'll bake the muffins. I'll continue to bake the muffins. You go ahead and do that. Like, not every woman is like that, but that's a personal choice. That's what's important to me. That's how I express, all parts of me while we're working. So I'd be pressing paninis and we'd be, thinking of innovative new ideas. Some of the staff would be Skyping in from Europe, and it's about making it happen and not being afraid to say, this is what works for me. It may not look like what everybody says it's supposed to look like, but do we put out a high quality product, and do we get the job done? Then yes.
That reminds me, in college, our feminist club always had a bake sale every year, and I thought it was always pretty funny. So we're going to open it up to questions in a little bit, but I think we'd like to hear from some of you if there are any managers, men or women in the audience, that have ideas that you'd like to share about how you make the workplace more balanced and how you recognize females and help them rise to the top. We'd love to hear from some of you. Or husbands that have stories about supporting your wives, or wives that have stories about supporting their wives. Anyone? Come on, guys. I heard someone over there.
She said they're just afraid.
Oh, they're just afraid.
Now here's one brave man.
Just a quick comment. We've noticed in the organization in which I work the same sort of situation that you mentioned about many young women busy with families, establishing their career. and finding it difficult to get into a leadership track. But we also found this to be true of many of our young men. So there is, I think, a complexity of what are perhaps maybe some female issues and what are otherwise generational issues. Could you address that issue?
I absolutely agree. I think that part of the effect of having more women in leadership positions has been the demand, the push for more flexible, more family-friendly job arrangements. But I think that, the true beneficiaries of that is everyone, men and women, those who have children and those who don't, people who just have interest and really want to balance their lives, their whole selves. When we talk about a healthcare setting, we want to be able to respect the whole person and give whole person care. I think that is true in an employment setting as well, that you want to be recognized for your whole self. And I think that as a generation, people are coming into the workforce really not wanting to sacrifice their whole selves for a job. And so I know when we've designed incentives and training programs for my staff at Crier Health, it was less of a standardized program, but what people really valued. For some, it was time off. For some, it was paying for a class. For some, it was, I want to be able to, I have this opportunity to present in Copenhagen. One of my young female staffers who had just finished her MPH, and so, as sort of a small company, that was sort of a big thing to be able to, but I wanted to support her and support her growth and make sure that she was able to have that opportunity. So we sent her to Copenhagen. And so, I think it's about really being more responsive to the individuals and what they value and what are truly incentives for them.
And I do have a comment on that. I think that the idea of becoming an executive or a leader, and this is my point of view, becomes less sexy as you get more experience and see what it's really like to have all that responsibility. And I think that this is true for both men and women, but since women are more likely to stay at home with the children, men have a greater pressure to actually be the breadwinner, and women have less of that pressure. So women get to opt out of some high-pressure careers more often just because they're more likely to stay at home. Next.
There's actually something wonderful that the UNLV, the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, offers, and it's called the Mcnair Program. Now, Ronald E. McNair was part of the Challenger mission, and they have set up this program to send underprivileged or underrepresented individuals, and that doesn't just mean ethnicity-based, up to master's and PhD level degrees. And one of their main focuses of the past 10 years has been to promote women in higher education, and not just undergraduate level, but as well for PhDs in math and in engineering and other things that are mostly male-dominated. So that's actually happening in our education system through at least one of these small programs, and it's happening, and I'm a part of it, and it's been a huge help to set that path. So it's been great.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So my question comes back to kind of the consumer side, which really comes down to monetization. And when you think about that 80% number again, and you say, okay, those big decisions, are they being, would they buy more, so to speak? Would they buy more? And should we be sort of encouraging women to kind of become the voices of the products? And I'm not talking about a spokesperson, I'm actually talking about within the organization, kind of moving those, if it's the marketing positions, the packaging position, whatever they are. I just feel like that to me is where we get to the core of what the problem is, because ultimately, and again, this is not about men versus women, but it's about selling product. And whatever that product is, an insurance or a hospitalization, doesn't matter. So I'm just wondering if you feel that there's certain roles that they should be going after.
I think that one of the things that will really drive the normalization of digital health, making it really part of our daily lives, will be when, particularly on the EMR, PHR side, will be driven by moms who are managing the healthcare for their family, for their children in particular. And if you start with a record from birth, and include all your immunizations and everything, and sort of grow up with a personal health record, grow up using apps, and as a mom, running your household and helping to manage all of this information through digital health tools, I think that will be one of the key drivers of accelerating the adoption and the normalization of digital health. So I think women from that role in particular have a great can have a great effect. I also think from the patient advocacy leaders, many of whose leaders are women, and Kathy Giusti from the Multiple Myeloma Research Foundation was mentioned. She's a personal hero of mine, someone with an MBA business background, married with her personal health experience, who really looked at transforming how drug discovery was done. And even sort of further back in history, I spent the holidays reading Emperor of All Maladies, a biography of cancer, which I'm sure many of you have read. And I found the story of Mary Lasker, whom we now know from the Lasker Foundation, to be really inspirational. And she got involved first as a donor, as an investor in cancer research, but found the precursor to the American Cancer Society to be rather lacking in her view. And so she said, that's not good enough. I'm going to work to create something different, something better. And because of that, we have a robust American Cancer Society. We have a National Cancer Institute. We have a war on cancer. Research was really focused. And so I really think of, who's going to be, and I probably will hopefully, be a woman who will be the Mary Lasker of digital health, who will say, this country absolutely must have a digital health infrastructure, must use it in the most impactful ways. And so I think from the advocacy side and from the power of women to really solve problems for themselves, for their families, and for the country, I think that's the role that I see women playing.
Thank you. Hello, this is great conversation, so I appreciate it. Congratulations to all of you that have extended yourself out into the scary world of being CEOs and higher ups. I'm a VP of advertising agency, and we have been pretty much women-led all through my existence, but I didn't realize it until right now, how that impacted it. But I started, 15 years ago, and we had a lot of stay-at-home dads there. Okay. And so I was wondering what kind of advances in technology you think will happen that will allow maybe women to become CEOs while their counterpart stays home, maybe because they can do remote work, or what technologies will women get so that they can balance that life and work.
When I was, a quick anecdote, when I was graduating from Harvard Business School, they had just done a longitudinal study of women graduates, because they had only been there for like 30 years, women graduating, so they finally had data on what happened to women after they graduated from the very expensive Harvard Business School. And they said the worst thing that you can do for your career is marry a high-powered man. And they looked at the women that had husbands that were actually in a demanding career, and those women were less likely to have influential roles themselves. The women that had the influential roles were more likely to be stay-at-home moms, or sorry, more likely to be single mothers, or women with husbands that were working in less demanding careers. So I thought that was really interesting. And I don't think that's the answer, but that was very interesting to me, is that a lot of the dynamic ends up being what do you decide to do at home with your spouse if you decide to have a spouse?
So, I mean, I would just say in answer to your question, I think that whether you have somebody at home or not, but Google Docs and Telepresence have revolutionized the ability to work from home and the ability to work remotely, even if you're working across different sites, and cutting back on the amount of travel. We have telepresence in many of our major offices, and I can sit in a room with people that are halfway around the world, and it looks like we're in the same room. I could see food on their face if we're having a lunch meeting. So it has just been, travel's reduced tremendously, which takes a huge burden off of work-life balance. The ability to just get stuff done whenever. I mean, I tell people in my office this story all the time, that I leave the office every day at 5:15. I have to make a train, my kids are home, I want to be able to go over homework and all of those sorts of things. I was going in the elevator one day, and this guy, I mean, 5 times on the way down, he kept saying, "Today is my birthday. The only reason why I'm leaving this early is today is my birthday. I'm going home because it's my birthday." And finally, I just looked at him and I'm like, I leave this time every day. So, don't feel guilty about it. But it's, the ability that if I have to leave at 5:15, if there's things that I still have to do, I have my computer at home. I can send emails. I can send emails at 1 o'clock in the morning if I so desire, and I can hold it until 7 in the morning so I don't bombard people at all hours of the night. So I think technology has made a huge impact on the ability to balance work-life. And whether you have 2 working families or somebody staying at home and somebody at work that also wants to have quality work-life balance, it's a huge help. And I look forward to what's coming next, because it's really good now and it can only get better.
And I think just jumping on that, I think one thing is to definitely simplify. Very often we tend to overcomplicate things, or add in an extra meeting or time, but wherever possible, just simplifying things, I think, will really add to overall work-life balance and more productivity in the end.
I think there's also just a culture shift into, if you look at how long your mom or dad kept their job versus our generation, I think people are staying, their tenures are a lot shorter now. And so if you can work somewhere for 5 years and you can kind of take turns. Does anybody watch Up All Night? That show? Yeah. Right? Like they're taking turns being stay at home, and I thought that was pretty cool, and that was pretty telling of kind of a shift in culture now.
I also hired my husband, which helped our work-life balance and our time together.
Hi, well, first I wanted to thank you for putting this panel together, because I've been coming here for 3 years to the Digital Health Summit, and it's not that often that you see even 1 woman on the stage, so it's really nice to see 4, first of all. And then second of all, I just wanted to answer your question about, I'm a CEO of a digital health company, and we're focused on infusing active music making into healthcare for a therapeutic benefit. And so to answer your question about what do we do to mentor younger women or younger men, I think it's really important, sort of to Donna's point, that different isn't better or worse, it's just different. And men and women a lot of times do come at things from different angles. I had a lot of male bosses who were that very unrisk adverse, very sort of lay it on the table, right or wrong, whereas I'm a little bit more collective in the way that I run the company. And a male friend of mine said, I would never gather opinion the way that you do. He would just go in and do what he thought, sort of come what may. And so I think that is important in modeling that you can be sort of who you want to be and still be a leader. And so my question is really a very practical question, which is for women in healthcare, what are the good networks? I mean, Pfizer has this sort of mentoring thing internally, but is there anything externally that helps female-led companies integrate into sort of the larger healthcare scene?
Well, Halle seems to create one every day. Some type of network that's supporting women, that's giving women opportunities and highlighting them. So I want to give kudos to Halle for everything she's creating. I belong to 2 organizations, in particular the Healthcare Businesswomen's Association, which does have chapters nationwide, actually globally, and it has been fantastically supportive of women and also highlighting corporate programs that are able to mentor women. And one of my mentors is your Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Frida Lewis Hall, who was our Woman of the Year. And so that is one organization that is fantastic in really focusing on teaching leadership and mentoring women. They also give an honorable mentor award to a man every year who has been instrumental in supporting women's careers throughout their companies. The other organization is for more sort of senior level women across healthcare sectors. The Women Business Leaders of the U.S. Health Industry Foundation, which has also been really phenomenal as a network to sort of ask questions about, how you get to that next level, how you get to sit on corporate boards, and really how do you make the most of your career in healthcare. So those are 2 examples.
Thank you. probably have time for one more question.
I'm Scott Mace with Health Leaders, magazine for hospital executives, but I'm here as an advocate for simplifying calendar sharing because I've run a blog for 7 years about people are frustrated that they can't share calendars. I also sit on the board of the calendaring and scheduling consortium. We really desperately need women, men, the industry, everybody to tell the calendar providers, Apple, Google, Microsoft, make this really simple because it really facilitates the lifestyles of all of the members of the family. And distressingly, this month, Google is turning off their ability to integrate with Outlook, which is just terrible.
Yeah.
And we all need to rise up and tell them that this is not right, and they need to do a lot
Let us
better
know
than
where
they're
the
doing.
petition is.
Yeah, exactly. Change.org, let's start that right now.
I think that the Google Calendar sharing, my team will say, that's really valuable.
But not everybody is on Google, and that's the point.
Everybody
There's
should
people
be,
with
though,
Apple.
probably.
That's not going to happen. Sorry.
Great.
Can
All
I just
right,
make one social comment? So I'm a dad of a 3.5-year-old little girl who's extremely smart, very precocious. And I think that dads need to be educated because I find, although her wardrobe is 99% pink, you know, I bought her a doctor's kit, and she works on all of her stuffed animals. And when I meet her little friends for play dates, the first question I always ask them is, what are you reading? What are you doing? You know, as opposed to, oh, you look so pretty, you look so cute. And I think that it goes a long way. And, you know, people taught me to evolve in that manner. I think if it starts early with little, you know, with our little friends in preschool, then they'll be up on stage like you all.
Yeah.
So just.
I recently saw something on Kickstarter called Goldie Blocks, and it was an engineering kit for young women to learn how to put things together. So I thought that was pretty cool. And I'm sure all of you have very supportive parents, or you wouldn't have made it up here today. I think that is really important. Thank you. Great. Well, this has been wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, it was.